Musicians, if you've ever dropped a brand new single, an album, or even a merch package and you've heard crickets, well, you're not alone. Most musicians are stuck in hope marketing, where you just post things and you just hope and pray that someone actually cares and buys. Well, our guest today, Jeff Walker, is the godfather of the product launch formula, a strategy responsible for over $1 billion in sales. Yes, $1 billion in sales across any industry you can think of. And today we're going to show you how to use that strategy and the principles around it to learn how to launch your music, grow your fan base, and actually make some money doing what you love. Jeff, welcome to Musicians Ignite.
Thanks, Dax. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, I'm excited to jump into this. So for those who are uninitiated into the term launch, what separates a launch from just, putting out an offer?
I mean, the analogy that seems to resonate is if you look at the way Hollywood releases a film, it's not just like one day all of a sudden it shows up in at the theater. They have a sequence. They've planned that launch. So, these days there's a trailer a year in advance. And then there'll be a second trailer, but there's not even just a trailer, there'll be a teaser for the trailer. And then as you get closer to it, all of a sudden the actors are starting to appear on all the podcasts and all the talk shows. And that all is leading up to the release of that film. If you look at the way Apple does it, it's not just one day, all of a sudden there's an iPhone on their website. I mean, think about that. It's like, oh, wow, wandering by, there's a new iPhone. No, they've built up to that. They've got rumors ahead of that. They've got they start to release, they'll do a release party, but even when they do that, the phone's still not available. So they'll build up to that with a structured pre-launch. And what you mentioned, we're going to talk, I'm sure we're going to get into some crazy numbers here. It all started very humbly. Trust me on that for everyone listening, everyone watching. It all started very, very humbly. But yeah, my clients have now done $1 billion in sales, and they've done it across every market you could imagine. But most of them are very small makers. They're very small creators, and they could be selling music. Most of them, frankly, are selling some type of a teaching or training or coaching. And the only way you can get to $1 billion was all these people doing these launches that might do 5,000 or 10,000 or 100,000, or maybe a few of them do $1 million launches. But this formula that I've developed over all these years allows us to have the same power as Hollywood, as Apple, as like the big gaming companies. All the entire methodology, that pre-launch, this brings all of that to the little guys like us.
Wow, that's a fantastic analogy. And you mentioned that, this was a humble beginning for you. And so in the late 90s, you cultivated this strategy. And to me, like I was born in 1995, so I'm 29 now, and thinking of the technology available back then and then what you were able to do with it is just it's unbelievably cool. So I'm curious, what was it like? For those that don't know, Jeff's first nickname was 6 and 7 because you were the first person attributed to making six figures in 7 days on the internet. So what was that process like where you first initially discovered this strategy and started to cultivate it?
Well, it's a long story. It did start. My first launch was when you were a year old in 1996, and I built up. Yeah, I for some reason I had this thought that in the early days of online, that if I could build up an email list of followers, of what we now call an audience, then there will be power there. And when I started, I was a stay-at-home dad. My kids were born around the same time you were, and I was home taking care of a couple of little kids, and I was desperate to make some money. I had some knowledge about the stock market, so I started publishing a newsletter about the stock market. And the first email newsletter went out. It was free. I had 17 people on that distribution list. It was everyone I knew who had an email list. And then I put up a website, the most basic website. I couldn't even afford a domain name back then. And so I got a free website with my internet account. And so gradually started to grow a few more subscribers. And then slowly, I was pushing that boulder uphill, had 100 subscribers, then a few hundred subscribers. And at some point I'm like, wow, now I can maybe sell something to them. And so
And how
I
big was the
had
list, by the way, when you
it, I don't remember exactly, but I think it was around 600. So after about 6 months, I'd gotten to about 600 people getting this newsletter. And and so I had no marketing experience, no sales experience. So I'm just going to tell you about two launches here. That first launch was in January of '97, and that launch I put together this idea this is actually the term became free to fee. It was basically a better version of the newsletter, an enhanced version of the newsletter. And I put together a launch, which I didn't know it was a launch. All I knew was these people were getting stuff for free, and they seemed to love me for sending this to them for free. And I was worried they wouldn't love me anymore. So I wanted to create this. I romanced them. And I said, this is all, I gave them amazing content, even more additional content, and then had that lead up into that sale. And, I'd never sold anything in my life. Well, when I was a Boy Scout, I sold a couple bags of donuts to my next door neighbor. But that aside, I'd never sold anything. And, I had this, it was just amazing when that first order came in. And in that first launch, I did $1,650 in sales, which was just everyone's got Dax, everyone has a different frame of reference for money.
yeah.
Everyone does. But for me, if I could have done a backflip, I would have done a backflip because that was just amazing that people were sending me money. And it was just absolutely ridiculous because that first sale is just such, the first sale to someone who's not your mom is just such a monumental thing. It just created this different belief system for me.
I was about to
But
say it was the pivotal moment where you realized what was possible.
yeah, I mean, I've done many, much bigger launches. I've done $1 million launches. I've done multi-million-dollar launches. In fact, my last 20 launches have been at least $1 million. I've had days where I've made $1 million. I don't even know how many days because I've had a lot of them. Um, I've had an hour where I did $1 million in sales, like in 53 minutes, but none of them were nearly as important as making $1,650 because that proved that I could create value in the world and get paid for that value. And
Absolutely.
you asked what it was like back then. Taking online payments was like rocket science. I couldn't figure it out. So that first launch, I had people send me checks. It was like print out this email, write a check. I don't know, Jax, have you ever written a check in your life? I
I
mean,
have. I've written a couple.
yeah, I mean, like write a check and mail it to me. And that was the first like 3 or 4 months. And then I figured out getting a merchant account. And even a merchant account these days, most people that's an account that allows you to process credit cards. But these days, mostly people will use Stripe or
Yeah.
something like that. That makes it so much easier. But yeah, it was slow going. But then the next launch I did about 4 months later, and I created a different offer for basically the same newsletter, added some bonuses, and that next launch did $6,000 in sales. And this is where really the first time I just lucked into making sales. But then that second time, I added a deadline. And the deadline was you have to buy it by such and such a time to get this special deal with these special bonuses and this special pricing. And that launch was tracking just like the first launch did. And then with about 8 hours left, all of a sudden the sales just started spiking. And that's where I learned about deadlines. And that's where I learned about scarcity and creating scarcity in your launch. And urgency. And
Yeah.
so that was like the first experiment. It was an accidental experiment, but it was an experiment. And from there, I just dove deep and I iterated and I iterated and I iterated.
Yeah.
And here we
I
are.
I want to touch on something you said there, Jeff, that I think is so relatable to every musician out there, which is you said back in the day you had this fear that by selling to your audience that you had accumulated by giving away content for free, and that pretty much describes musicians right now, constantly giving away their music for free, performances for free, and they have this email list that they're building up because that's something I definitely impress upon my audience is to build an email list, because I know a little bit about, some of your launches and how you helped Frank Kern with his launches and some of these amazing launches that happened in the early 2000s. So what was it like when you were making that? Like, I guess what was the part of you that allowed yourself to sell to your audience without feeling, weird about it? How did you get over that initial fear?
Well, Dex, I'm going to answer that, and then we should just circle back and talk about artists because and feeling bad about making money
Mhm.
because that is I see that a lot among my students. It's I've got lots of artists, I've got authors, I've got
Yeah.
musicians. I mean, musician not my top thing, but I've got some of them. I've got but also even like therapists. There's so many fields where people feel like it's wrong to make money. So we can talk about that. But for me, it was pure desperation. My wife was supporting a family. We didn't have so we were one income family, two young kids. There was very, very little money going around. It was like we had a roof over our house and we had food on the table, but not much more. And I was just desperate to somehow to contribute to the family. And my
Yeah.
goal was if I could make $10,000 in a year, then we give us so much more margin. So for me, it was just, I didn't, at that point in my life, I didn't have time to think about like whether this is the right thing or it was just desperation. I
Yeah.
mean, I did have this feeling like, and going back, so I was a stay-at-home dad
Yeah.
for 5 or 6 years, and this is in the 90s when that was very, very uncommon. And so this newsletter, this free newsletter was like the first thing that was really starting to happen in my life. And even though I wasn't making any money, it was like I felt like I had all of a sudden some momentum, some motion in my life. And so I did have that. Boy, I hope they don't hate me, but I got over that because we just really needed money
No, absolutely. And that kind of being in that situation can help energize us to take the actions necessary to change our lives for the better.
for sure.
So I totally resonate with that. Now, I want to talk about what you mentioned, which is that fear is an underlying insecurity that exists with artists, generally speaking. I talk to a lot of artists, one on one, and that seems to be one of the number one concerns when it comes to selling is being viewed a certain way, the fear of judgment and all these
For
kind
sure.
of things. What do you feel like is the main beliefs that you've seen for your clients that have helped them break out of that shell and break past that limiting belief?
I totally get this, especially with music. I'm a huge, huge music fan. And even if you go back, like I'm an old school punk from
Oh,
like,
nice.
Clash, Sex Pistols. And then, well, I mean, Green Day's ancient now, but that was like new school but yeah, early days, late
That's
70s,
awesome.
early 80s, old school punk. So I mean, I'm like, if you want to talk about a movement where there was this hypersensitivity to selling out, that was it. You
Yeah,
know, that was
100%.
that was absolutely it. But the reality is like if you're an artist, no matter what you're doing in the world, if you're doing good work, you need to get paid for that work so you can continue to do that work. So what does an artist do? A musician creates a piece of art, whether it's a recording or it's a live show, there, or even a podcast, whatever. You're creating something that's making people's lives better, whether it's entertaining them or it's moving them or even educating them or activating them. You're creating something in this world that has value. And the only way you can continue to do that is if you can actually feed yourself and you can actually put a roof over your family. And oh, by the way, it'd be nice if you could do this full time. If you didn't have to work like three other jobs to support your music. And
Absolutely.
so I think there are ways, so many great ways you can deliver more value in the world, but only if you can fund that. I mean, unless you just want to, operate your own nonprofit and work four jobs to support that nonprofit, you need to find a way to to actually make the sale, to make money, to monetize your work.
Oh, couldn't agree more, Jeff. So let's say a musician has made that commitment. They've decided, okay, I'm going to get over this fear. I'm going to offer something up to my audience. what is the, you mentioned sort of the pre-launch process of Hollywood. For a musician or any other kind of creative, what are the assets that they need to start accumulating to have the most effective pre-launch?
Well, I mean, the first asset, of course, is an audience, and
Yes.
you've been talking to them about that, and gather that audience wherever and however you can. Email is always going to be my preference, but obviously social and at your shows, getting people's email. I mean, this is all basic stuff. So that's the first asset. The second, I mean, really, what you need to do is um, you need to create an offer, and that offer is it's hopefully it's something more than just, hey, I just released this, go listen to it, or hey,
Yeah.
I've got a show coming up. If you just look at like the top acts and what they're putting together, like for some of the packages, some of the VIP packages, the meet and greet packages. So that when I say an offer, it's like, what can you create that will create a larger experience? And usually, I think with artists, a great place to start is it's like in this industry we call it touch the hem. If
Mm,
someone wants to touch the just be close enough to just touch the hem of your clothing, and so letting people in, in a closer way, whether it's virtually or in person, but create a package where they can get to know you better. So that's like that offer. And
yeah.
then you need to build a narrative arc that leads into that offer. And that could be with what we call pre-launch content. I talked about like with Hollywood, it's those trailers, that's the pre-launch content. For me, like I'm teaching people how to grow their businesses, right? And so I have a course that does that. I have a couple different offerings, but I have a course that does that. So what I'll do is I'll create pre-launch content that leads into that. And that pre-launch content will basically educate people on the launch formula, on the basics
Yeah.
of the launch formula, on the types of launches they can do, on how to actually do that, to ask for the sale, to open the cart and ask for the sale. So I'll have a sequence that, in my world, it might be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days that leads into the actual offer. And I would think as a musician, you probably would space that out a little bit longer. I
Hmm.
think what often works for musicians is just any behind the scenes. People eat that up because you have to step into the idea of if you're an artist, if you're a musician, and you're creating work that people are going to listen to, that they're actually interested in, then you have to, just embrace your inner rock star.
Yeah.
That that you are an interesting person.
That's something I want to ask you about because for an artist, there's a lot of this limiting belief where we think, I try to exemplify, hey, here's how an offer that, Beyonce put together, and you can take from that and borrow that. And the first thing that they'll say is, well, I'm not Beyonce. And it's like, I understand that we may not be as big as Beyonce, but there is someone out there that will discover your product or you as a musician that will love you as much as you love your favorite musicians.
100%.
And so
And
we
you
have to kind
yeah,
of embrace that as a possibility of like, wow, it's actually okay for me to be that person that people look up to and go, wow, I'll pay for a VIP ticket to the show or whatever it happens to be.
absolutely. I mean, Beyonce wasn't Beyonce at one point. And, we all start somewhere. And, there's this famous essay. I don't think I've actually ever read it, but it's called "A Thousand True Fans."
Oh yeah.
And and but I don't think I've ever read it, but I know the concept so well because, like, I was just talking to one of my neighbors about this, and they were putting up like neighborhood photos on the internet. I'm like, yeah, I don't really want my photo up on that website because I don't want people finding my neighborhood where I live. And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, I'm like a bit of a public person. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, in this tiny little sliver of the world, this tiniest little sliver of the world, I'm like Beyonce. And Beyonce doesn't publish her home address, right?
Hmm.
Because people are going to come knock on her door. And for me, I mean, it might be 0.0000001% of of the world, or throw in more zeros, but there's this tiny little section of people that I am a freaking rock star. And your job as an artist is to gradually assemble those. And the theory is if you can come up with 1,000 true fans, people that are just going to buy everything you put out, then you can make a very, very good living from just 1,000 fans.
100%. And now one of the things that I feel like you have a lot of experience with, and correct me if I'm wrong. So back in the day, I've talked about this a little bit on my channel, but there was a salesman named Chet Holmes, and he
Mhm.
pioneered a concept called the Dream 100.
Yep.
How has that strategy played a part in you cultivating those that core base, right? That core foundation of people that do view you like a rock star, and how can musicians sort of model your pathway,
Yeah, I got a chance to have a couple conversations with Chet before he unfortunately passed away.
Oh
A
yeah.
super powerhouse. Um, like I think of it like concentric circles. Like there's like the whole world out there, and then there's that little tiny section of the world that may have heard of me.
Yeah.
And maybe they see me on a podcast, right? They aren't involved in me, but they might have heard something. They might have seen one of my videos. I've got a YouTube channel with a lot of videos. So they're just aware of me. And
Yeah.
then with that, so there's the world, and there's this concentric, there's this first circle. And then inside of that are people that might have like followed me on social. And then inside of that circle is people that have joined my email list. And as we move in, there's a greater level of intimacy, there's a greater level of connection, they're more activated.
Hmm.
So what's inside of that? So they then next level in, maybe they've actually gone through one of my free trainings, because every year we do this launch masterclass, and I just for free, and I just teach my heart out for like 10 hours over 4 days. And so masterclass. And then if they come to the masterclass, I'll invite them to become a product launch formula owner. So that's the next level in.
Okay.
So once they become a PLF owner, then maybe whether if they become a repeat and they stick with me in product launch formula, then the next level, and we have this amazing coaching program called Launch Club. That's another level of intimacy. And then within there could be my mastermind. I have this amazing mastermind group I've had for 15 years. And so there, I'm super tight with those folks. I get together with them 3 times a year in person and been doing that for 15 years.
Wow.
And then maybe inside that is like my partners, my promotional partners, people that are affiliate partners that spread the word about me and my products. And so like to me, like the whole goal is to continually move people further in on those concentric circles to get them closer and closer and closer, and they will self-select. And if it's 1 million people approximately have gone through my free training over the years, but you get drill down, and there's only like 40 people in my mastermind. But those are people that are going to go to the mat for me, that are going to be there for me, and I'm going to be there for them as well. And if you can think about that, of just continually cultivating your relationships so that you have a greater level of intimacy and a greater level of connection with the people that are raising their hands and moving forward, then the benefits are just immeasurable, immeasurable.
Yeah, I love that. And what's kind of interesting is I was thinking you were going to go external with it, but you went internal by kind of pointing out the concept of the value ladder, right? Getting them closer to touch the hem, going up further the value. That's something that I see all over the place when it comes to live shows for musicians. There's the GA ticket,
Yep.
then there's like the gold ticket, then there's the platinum ticket, then there's the you get bonus VIP parking, and it keeps kind of going up
And
from
then,
there.
there's the meet and greet, and there's just
Absolutely, and it's just kind of the only limitation is what you're willing to offer. I think that's where a lot of musicians kind of they get halted. I remember having a conversation with my band for the first time about, guys, let's do a VIP offer, and they're like, I don't know, Dax, we're not, the bands in our genre like Shinedown or some of those big rock bands of the modern 2000s, and we're like, we're not these guys. And I was like, let's just try it. We'll do it for $70, not 150, not 200. We had 7 people take us up on that offer, and that kind of what you
and
were
I
describing
bet
for
they
that.
Yeah, I bet they're awesome people too, right? I mean,
100%. Some of those people that attend that, they come to every show, they buy every VIP. They're the people that message me and go, "When are you going to put out a new shirt? Because I have everything. I need a new thing now." And so that's I think a testament to your point, which is that creating those layers that drive people, closer to you and have a higher price point. People think, who will pay that for me? It's like, well, no one if you don't ask. You got to at least have the offer.
right.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that's fantastic. Now, something that was important about this launch process that you mentioned, and I'm a huge fan of this, is the story arc, the storytelling behind this. And so, what are some of the foundational storytelling principles that have helped you kind of pre-frame your offer?
Yeah. So big picture, what I
Yeah.
think is I am telling the story of my prospects. So we've got prospects, the people who haven't bought yet,
Hmm.
and then we have clients or customers. And I am telling the story of my prospects' future life, of what of the future success that they're going to have.
Interesting.
And all the way through it, because at the end of the day, I'm asking people to do something big. I'm asking them to step into this future where they have created a business and they're growing that business. Or I mean, you're doing the same thing with musicians. You're asking them to step into like going from where they are, which I don't know, it could be they're just playing with some buddies, they're just in the garage practicing, or maybe they've done an open mic, or I mean, I'm sure you've got people who are actually are doing shows, but you're asking them to see this bigger picture, this bigger future, and where maybe they're stepping on a much bigger stage, or maybe they're stepping on their first stage, or maybe they're making their first offer for the VIP. And that's a big deal for them to, first, they have to see it in their mind's eye. And they have to go from, wow, that could be cool, like to, wow, that, I'm going to do that, to, they're sort of like the conceptual, that would be cool, to, I can do that, to I will do that. And for me to get people to step into I will land, it's easy to sit around in the I wish land or the
Yeah.
someday land or I hope land, but to go into I will land, I have to give them that story. I have to flesh out what that story is and how they're going to make that transformation. So one of the things we do, I think a lot about, is what we call the PS path.
Okay.
And that's where I'll first define a problem that people have. And for me, it's they want to have an online business. They want all the freedom and the income and the lifestyle of having a successful online business. But they need to launch. So that's the first problem, is you can't have that business unless you launch. And so then I'll actually in that story arc, I'll give the solution. And I'll say, well, here's the formula. I've had 1 million people go through my free training. I've had 10,000 people go through my paid training. They've done $1 billion in sales. We've tested this over and over in every market, every language you can imagine. Here is the formula. And I'll actually teach the formula. So I just gave them a problem and then I gave them the solution. But Dax, you know what the cause of all problems, the cause of all the problems in the world is solutions. It's just like
Huh.
it's an interesting thing to think about.
That's really interesting, Jeff.
Yeah,
Huh.
the cause of all problems are solutions. So
Yeah. Wow.
yeah, you'll be thinking about that for a couple days.
I am now. Yeah, yeah, my brain's firing at a million miles an hour because now I'm
Yeah.
just thinking about like every solution I've ever had in my life. I'll give the audience kind of an insight. When I invested a couple years ago into my business, I had a problem, and then that coaching allowed me to grow my business. And so that problem was solved.
And
But
your
now I
life
got
is
the new
perfect,
problem.
and you don't have to worry about anything ever again.
Yeah, exactly. Now there's no problems forever. No, yeah, now you got this whole set of problems of like I have to maintain the lead flow. I have to do this, I have to do that. And so
Yeah.
no, that's great stuff, Jeff.
So
Wow.
so so what I'll do is I'll problem solution, and then right in that first piece of content, I'll define what the next problem is, and say, you know what, in my next video, I'm going to solve that problem for you. And I won't frame it that way. I'm like, but now you
Right.
got another problem. But it's like, it'd be like
You'll
in my
come to that
master class.
realization.
Yeah, in my master class. Okay, let me teach you about the sideways sales letter. This is the formula to launch that we've been teaching for 20 years now. And we'll teach that. And then the next one will be now, and at the end, like now we actually use this formula in there's three primary types of launches. And the launch that's right for you will vary depending on where you're at. In the next video, I'm going to teach you, or the next live training, however you want to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
In the next video, I'm going to show you the three primary types of launches and help you figure out which one is the right one for you. So that was me defining the next problem, which was you don't know which type of launch to use. They're going through the first training thinking, oh, I know everything now. I got it all. Boom, I'm ready to go. And then I'm like, well, you know what? There's actually three different ways to deploy this formula. And there'll be a different fit depending if you're starting out or if you've got a business. In the next video, we're going to walk through all that and share it with you.
See, that's really interesting. And you said a phrase there that really caught my ear, which is you said sideways sales letter. That's a very interesting term because we a couple days ago we just finished our interview with John Carlton, who is like
Right.
one of the masters of sales letters.
Yeah.
But you're implementing something called a sideways sales letter. Could you elaborate on that concept a little bit?
So first of all, John's a friend of mine, been for a very, very long time. He's brilliant. I saw you post on social that you just interviewed him. I'm like, "Eh, this is the OG week, right? That you
Yeah, dude, I am super pumped because I'm this is like people I've been reading about for a long time, and yeah, and so I'm happy to introduce musicians who may not know about yourself and John Carlton. Like I think you guys have helped me in my life tremendously. So yeah, yeah, I was
that's
super
cool.
excited.
That's cool. So John's amazing, and was amazing long before I was amazing. Um, uh, but so that idea. So John, I'm sure talked about sales letters, talked about sales copy, and and a lot of what I do is what we call copywriting. John's one of the greatest copywriters ever in history. And if you take that idea of like a long sales letter, and they used to be delivered, John, a lot of his stuff was magazines, magazine ads, but they would be long form copy in those ads. And then they would drive to something, to another, often to getting another piece of information, which would be this long letter that you get in the mail, snail mail, and it might be a letter that's 8 or 10 or 12 pages long. And then that idea of this long sales letter, and I'm sure you've all seen these things, that when that jumped to the internet, they went from being 8 or 10 or 12 pages long to being like 20 or 30 pages long because you'd have to pay for the
Yeah,
cost of printing and mailing anymore. But people, for the most part, those worked in the early 2000s, and then they started to lose their value. And there's still times I use them, and there's still times I love using them. But the sideways sales letters, we take that 20-page letter and we turn it on its side, and we deliver it in time through the pre-launch content. So you're not one thing I don't want people to think that your pre-launch content is just nothing but a pitch. It's not just a sales letter. It's not like you took the sales letter and cut it into three pieces and sent it out over time,
yeah, yeah,
but you're doing the same heavy lifting that sales letter did, but you're doing it by delivering value in that PS path.
yeah. Okay.
Because like when I do it in my launch masterclass, I'll have people go through that and just take the free stuff and never do any paid stuff and still launch because we're delivering real value. And I just think that these days it just works better with the way we've got super, super sophisticated markets. We've got very discerning consumers. Everyone's seen everything and done everything. Everyone knows they're in a funnel. Everyone knows there's an offer coming. And so just be upfront about it. It's like I do that like in the first 5 minutes of my first. So this master class is going to be about 10 days long of just content, content, content leading to an offer. But from the beginning, I'm like, hey, I'm Jeff Walker. I've done all these things. This is why you should pay attention to me. And I'm going to teach my heart out. I'm going to give you three or four of these trainings over this time, all kind. And oh, by the way, I do have a paid offer, and I'm going to be talking about that down the road. But let's get to the teaching right now.
Yeah, yeah. You kind of get that out of the way so that way there's not that like anticipation or extra thought in the back of their head of like, is it, are they really giving me value or is this just a sales pitch?
Right. It's not like, I mean, and frankly, this has changed over the years because
Yeah,
in olden days, you didn't, people, people are just more sophisticated now. We
yeah.
all are. We're all more jaded. But it's not like that offer is some monster in the closet that you're just waiting to, is going to jump out and grab people. That just doesn't work. So just get it out of the way. We got, if I earn your attention, there, you might want to go deeper with me, but first let's just teach.
Interesting. And you said that like this sideways sales letter, though it's not just taking your sales copy and putting it through videos, you said it does the same heavy lifting. And so what that kind of makes me think of is the purpose of the sales letter is really to get rid of the objections and the resistance people may have to moving
Hmm.
forward
Hmm.
with you.
Hmm.
And so instead of the long form sales copy where it's a lot of just rationalization of why they need to move forward, you're just giving value and showing them how they can do it.
Yeah.
They're getting crystal, like you said, in their mind's eye. How
Yeah.
can I move forward? How can I do all
Yeah.
just to do that, right?
Yeah, and you just said something important. It is objections. I'm crushing objections right from the start because people are coming in. It's like my audience. I'm too old. I'm too young. I've got an accent, and I don't. English is my second language, or people in my market don't buy, or I'm scared to ask for money because it feels creepy. Excuse me. There'll be, everyone's got all these, it won't work for me. Like you know what, I know you've got this case study of someone who built a business teaching guitar, but I teach ukulele, so it won't work for me. So you're answering those objections all the way through, and I firmly believe you are serving people in this process in answering those objections.
Yeah.
Because again, I've been blessed. I mean, you heard, I just wanted to make $10,000. That was, but over the years, it's grown and it's grown and it's grown. And then I had one moment, it was in 2008, and I did a launch. That was the launch that did $1 million in 53 minutes. It did $3.73 million in about 34 hours. I closed it down at that 34-hour mark. We were making $100,000 an hour in sales, and I closed it because we were overwhelmed. We got to the point where we weren't going to be able to service our clients.
Oh wow.
And when I did that, Dex, I've got a very simple lifestyle. I live out in the mountains. I like to ski. I do own some very, very nice guitars. I
Oh
own some
nice. What
very
do you
nice
got?
guitars. Oh, you don't want to even get me started, but ask me, I'll just finish the story. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I
at
got you.
that point, I'm like, I now achieved every financial material goal that I ever dreamed of. And at that point, sort of my life more went towards service, towards helping people. And I still make a lot of money and I still really like making all that money. I give a lot of it away, but I save a lot of it. Money here, universe, it's like keep sending the money. I love it. I love it. But really it became about service. And so when I have someone in my world that comes into my world that they are thinking they could create a business and thinking they can get their work out in the world and thinking they can get paid for it, it's my job to take them down that path. And part of that is answering all those objections. You got to do that. You got to do that.
Absolutely, because yeah, fans have their own objections. Whether at a show and you're on stage and you have an offer, people may think like, oh, I don't have cash. It was like, oh, well, we take credit cards, and just that little tiny phrase of, oh, and by the way, we take plastic or whatever, conquers that little thought that they have in their head of like, oh, I won't be able to do that because I don't have any cash on me. I just have cards. I don't know if they'll
Yep.
take cards.
Yep. And
And so
those words you say and how you say them make so much difference.
absolutely. We a couple weeks ago we were talking to Ross Jeffries and Marshall Silver, like hypnotist style people, and they're
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
how you say words and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And
Yeah. Marshall's pretty amazing. Yeah.
yeah, he is. I really enjoyed talking to him. I think he was just dropping gems. He
Yeah.
was talking to because he talks a lot about sales persuasion from the stage, right?
Yeah,
And so we were applying that like in a live setting context. But what I
totally.
love about what you do, Jeff, is that you apply a lot of, it's like I know you've done live things before, right? But you apply this online and just absolutely crush it. And I think a lot of musicians nowadays, they need that skill set more than ever
For sure.
because touring is way more expensive than it used to be. Going out there, like I've been doing this for around 11 or 12 years, and the touring costs have only gone up, and the pay is getting more raised with it, especially after COVID and stuff. So mastering online sales and using something akin to your product launch formula, I think is absolutely essential for artists and musicians to understand.
Yeah.
So one thing I am curious about, having like, done a fair amount of research on you, Jeff, is you've used the word mental triggers before.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite mental triggers that you have found have been the most persuasive or useful over your career?
Yeah, well, I mentioned earlier that the difference between the first launch and the second launch was scarcity. That's a mental trigger. When there's
Uh,
less of something, we want it more. When there's less tickets for VIP, we want them more, right? And so that's one. Authority is a huge one. And you need to put authority early on in your launch so people will actually pay attention to you.
yeah,
That it's simply that when we perceive someone as being an authority, we'll pay more attention to them. Social proof, this idea that if we see other people doing something, we'll do it as well. If you sell out shows in the past and you just talk about that going forward, absolutely. I mean, you just look at like some of the larger acts and how quickly the shows can sell out, like within minutes. Then what does that do for the next time they open up a series of dates? Those sell out as well. Um, Likability, when people like you, they're just going to feel more, you're going to be, it'll be easier to persuade people to do things. Reciprocity, you see this a lot in music,
oh yeah,
when you give early access to something, when you give a track away, like anything like that. The idea is that if you give something to someone, they're going to want to give something, back to you. Community is a really big one. That's one that I might, I'm good with community. I've got the communities I've been able to build among our PLF owners, among our launch club, among our mastermind is just amazing. And so people will act in accordance with how they believe the community acts. So, there's like I grew up, my dad had this really, we had a beautiful lawn. My
yeah,
dad was cutting the grass. No, I was cutting the grass. My dad was watering it and fertilizing it. And I don't think he had that beautiful lawn because he wanted to grow a beautiful lawn. I think he had that beautiful lawn because that was like the thing you did in our neighborhood was you took care of your lawn. And so community, I think, is a huge one for musicians. I
see
mean,
that's, yeah,
if
go
you
ahead.
think of certain acts that have trained I mean, look at the Grateful Dead, how they trained their people to act, right? Was just it was just crazy that they
Yeah,
would. I mean, and you see this over and over among among the followings for musicians that they have created a sense, and partly it's created by the fans and the community, but
true.
part it's stoked by the musicians themselves. They help set what those community standards are.
Yeah, I think you pointed out something really interesting, that a lot of it comes from the fans as far as its genesis, but it's funneled and directed by the band. The band
Right.
kind of harnesses what the fans have kind of came up with and figured out how to, let's point it this way. And so that's really interesting, the community aspect of it, because some of the things that you were mentioning made me think of like Robert Cialdini, his book Influence,
Yep.
right? Insanely amazing book. If you guys haven't read that yet, pick it up. But community, that's something I haven't heard before. And that's a really important part of the artist fan experience, is that community, the culture. And
Yeah.
now this is something that I was curious about. I watched one of your videos recently. You have a mastermind that's been running for 15 years. And you mentioned that one of the most important parts of it is, for lack of a better phrase, sifting the people in that community and watching out to make sure that the community is as healthy as it could possibly be. What would you say are the things that musicians and artists should look out for people who may come into a community and make it less than it could possibly be.
At that level, and we're talking, people are the people in that group are seven figures, eight figures. We've had people in there that are nine-figure businesses, so anywhere from $1 million to $100 million. Mostly, it's most people in there are between say $4 million and $20 million in,
Yeah,
in their business. So they're very serious entrepreneurs. Um, I think the number one thing is just we're looking for someone that's going to fit with the community and someone who's going to be a giver, not a taker. My friend Joe Polish says life gives to the giver and takes from the taker.
mhm,
And I truly believe that. So we're looking for someone that's going to come in and participate, be a giver, just be fit in with the community. And the community vibe is just incredibly powerful. They're so supportive of each other. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
yeah,
And to get into that, I have this whole selection process. It's not like an applicate like other people have applications. Well,
yeah.
the Navy SEALs, they don't have an application. They have a selection. That's what they call it, the
Uh,
selection process. And so it's a selection process to get into the mastermind, including there's a whole bunch of steps, and it leads to a one-on-one interview with me that's an hour long that isn't me trying to sell them. It's them trying to sell me on why they're going to fit into it. But yeah, and and I've had in the early days, I was less good at this sifting process, and we've had several, probably up to a dozen people over the years that I had to do my try to gracefully, well, that I gracefully, hopefully gracefully, uninvited for the next year. Like they didn't get invited back after the first
yeah.
year. I've gotten much better at that. It's been years since I've had to do that.
Mhm.
And but yeah, it's people that are going to fit. And for that, for my group, they many of them will refer to it as their family of choice. We're all born into a family. We can't pick the family we're born into, and some of us are lucky, and some of us are less lucky with those families. But this is like a family of choice where they visit each other around the world. They just support each other in so many different ways. It's about the coolest thing I've ever done is build this group.
Well, that's awesome. So, would you say that mostly when it comes to sifting through a community and identifying people who may not be the best fit for it, have you found it mostly to be a performance fit or a attitudinal fit? Something.
Mostly attitudinal because it's pretty easy to solve for the performance fit because
Okay.
they're going to tell me as part of the application that comes before the selection, they're going to tell me about the size of their business, about, they're going to give me their website and their social so I can check all that out. Almost everyone that comes in these days is coming in as a direct referral from someone that's already in the group.
Mhm.
So I have a pretty good sense of this, of where they're at in their business and how they're performing.
Yeah.
And then, within that, I'm looking for different skills that I can have in the group. That I guess that's a key thing is, we have people that are just amazing marketers. We have other people that are amazing at putting it live on a live event. We have other people that are amazing, like thought leader, like front stage stars.
Yeah, yeah.
We have people that are amazing at paid traffic, at social. So I'm always looking for a really well-rounded balance. So we just don't have like 40 people that are just like geeking out on launches.
Yeah, yeah.
I want like 6 or 8 people that are geeking out on launches, but I want the rest of people to have incredible skills that are very diverse. So just to add to the strength of the group, because I believe that in diversity is strength, just 100%.
Yeah, that's a really great perspective that I haven't heard about it, which is like a lot of times people will get too narrow in the type of person that they want into, like for a musician's example, a VIP community or a fan club or something like that. Um, but no, I just think that's really important is you identified the skills, making it well rounded so that it's not just one type of person in there.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if you're a sports fan, but it's like we're going into the draft. I own, I'm the general manager for an NFL team. We're going into the draft and there's a great quarterback available, but I've got some amazing quarterback already, but I don't have any receivers or I don't have any linemen or I don't have running backs or I don't have cornerbacks. I'm going to be looking for the holes to fill those holes.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Absolutely. So I really appreciate that. I didn't even expect to talk about that today, but that was really
Yeah.
valuable, Jeff. So
Yeah,
I know we're
it's like,
getting.
dude, coming back to guitars, I've got I've got like I got a really nice Les Paul.
Oh,
Like
nice.
it's a custom shop 59 replica.
Gold
Just
top?
no, it's a Sunburst.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, it's just it actually Frank Kern bought that guitar for me.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a beautiful ES 335.
Very, yeah.
Um I've got just an American Strat is my sort of go-to daily. Um and then that's electric. Then I've got three nice Martin acoustics, including a double lot that's like you know the one that Clapton played
Yeah.
in his Unplugged album. And I've got another nice Martin that's basically it's Martin's knockoff of a Taylor 400 series, or
Okay.
not four, no, the eight, was it the 18?
The 800?
It's like the little I like smaller guitars. I'm all about comfort. It's
I'm
not
glad
yeah.
John Carlton said that about his favorite Martin is a shorter scale length one too.
Yeah. I mean just yeah, so but the whole I've got talking about like picking like what I I need a telly. I don't have a telly. And like all my heroes are, you know, Keith Richards, Joe Strummer, Bruce Springsteen are all telly guys. And so I need a telly and I
Do you
just
want, are you going for like the blonde color or are you going for more like the butterscotch or
Probably blonde. It's going to
yeah.
be one of those, blonde or butterscotch. But see, here's heresy right here. Is I, like I said, I like comfortable guitars, and I think Tellys are like not comfortable guitars.
Interesting.
And
Is it the right hand?
well, it's the right hand, but I want one with a belly cut. And I know, you know, like the deluxes have belly cuts. Some of them do,
Yeah, yeah.
and they're more comfortable. But I know it's like blasphemy to be talking about a Telly with a belly cut. So.
Hey, I mean, you like what you like, and you know what's comfortable is what's comfortable. See, like talking about short length guitars, I have the advantage of I have a few acoustic guitars that are a little bit more shorter scale length because I have clown feet but short hands. I don't know what was going on, you know, but whatever, right? You deal the cards you dealt, right? But um, oh, anyway, I play baritones too. So on one side, I'm like, I got these nice, comfortable guitars, but for my band, we tune down low, so I have to have these baritones where I'm just like, oh my God. So yeah, I know what it's like. If I can just be comfortable while I'm playing, that's what I'm striving for. But
Nice.
that's really cool, Jeff. Like I think it's something that not a lot of people understood is that like John plays guitar, you play guitar, Frank plays guitar, Eben Pagan plays guitar. Like a lot of these OG guys in the internet marketing space are musicians.
Well, so those three, so Frank can really play, John can really play, Eben can really play, and I'm good at buying guitars.
Hey, that's a good skill to have,
Yeah.
though. I
But you
wish I
know
was.
what? What I do get to play when I play with other people, it's usually with my mastermind because
Oh,
we've
interesting.
got a bunch of musicians in that group, and you know we'll in the evenings we'll bring them in here to Durango, my hometown in Colorado, and we'll sit around the fire and we'll play songs and have a song circle, and it's just so much fun.
Oh, that's awesome sounding, man. Well, Jeff, I know we're getting close on time here, so I've got some rapid fire questions for you
Got it.
to kind of close out the chat today. So first, one book every musician should read, other than anything you've put out.
Oh, well, first of all, I think that Cialdini's book, Influence, it'd be a great one. That was super because I did read that book in '03, made a big impact on me. I was doing a lot of the stuff, but I didn't know how to talk about those things. So he gave me the names
Oh, interesting.
for that. I think The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. That's a good one. It's short. It's awesome.
Or if I
I think Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott is about storytelling. It's a great one. So I was supposed to give you one, but there's a
No,
few.
those are great. Hey, I know what I'm going to be going to Amazon after our chat.
Have you? So you're not? Have you read the War of Art?
I haven't. No, that's a new one for me.
Okay, dude, that you're gonna. I think you're gonna like that one. And Stephen Pressfield's someone who I've gotten to know. He's a bit of a hero to me, and He's a novelist, but he also puts out, business ebooks. And the War of Art is all about the struggle that all artists, and I would include anyone who's building a business and anyone who's obviously a musician, the internal struggle we have to get our art out into the world and the things that will hold us back from getting that art out into the world. It's super powerful.
Wow, thank you for that recommendation. I'm excited to go pick that up. All right, next question. Worst launch advice that you hear all the time,
Worst launch advice.
or maybe
Anything.
blunder. Maybe not. It's not advice, but
Yeah, well,
worst.
I mean, well, sir, so the biggest thing is anything holding people back from actually launching and moving forward. Like if I
Mm,
had a bigger list, if I had a fancier website, if I had more followers,
yeah.
just get the first launch done and learn. And whether you make zero sales or you just crush it, get that first one done. Um, I think the blunders I see, worry about your offer. Like I have, dude, I've been selling product launch for this October will be 20 years. I've been selling the same
That's
damn
awesome,
course.
dude.
And it's been reiterated over and over and over. We got a brand new version we just released. And so I've got a little experience selling this, but I still obsess every single time I launch it. What is the actual offer? What are people going to get? How am I going to communicate the value of that offer? So not like I just said, launch, get it launched, but also obsess about your offer and then obsess about communicating how that offer is going to change people's lives.
Awesome, Jeff. And then the final rapid fire question. This is going to be kind of an interesting one. What is the most profitable launch mistake you've ever made?
The most profitable mistake. Oh my gosh, that is a good question. I think that, well, let's see. That launch that I talked about in '08 that did 3.7 million
Yeah.
was it was a really hard launch. It was very profitable. It was amazingly profitable. It was a very, very hard launch though. We had our server crash about 3 or 4 minutes after we went live, and that just caused headaches that you just cannot even imagine when we had all these people who thought they put their credit card in, pushed the order button, and got a server not found. So, where it crashed in between loading the order page
Oh,
and
goodness.
and even worse, some of those orders went through and some of them didn't. So just trying to figure that out was just it went on for weeks. So I guess not having that one, it ended up being incredibly successful, unbelievably successful. But yeah, we just were understaffed and our tech wasn't there. The tech's all so much better these days. But
Yeah, I was about to.
that was rugged. But then also it created this mythology that we took it off the market when so many people were still buying it. And then we had that scarcity going forward. And it goes back to that idea of, that show sells out, then the next time that thing's available, they're going to buy. And so I created this myth around you got to buy stuff immediately because Jeff pulled it off the market. So I guess that,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm super happy with that answer. That was great, Jeff. Well, everyone out there, if you want to go learn more from Jeff Walker, I recommend going to his website, checking out Launch. That's a fantastic resource to go check out from Jeff. Jeff, what would you recommend is the best website people could go to check out what you got going
Well,
on?
well, first, you can go to Amazon and get my book. It's like,
Woo!
$10 for the Kindle version. It sold hundreds of thousands of copies. It was a New York Times bestseller. It's got over 1,000 reviews and it's 4.7 stars. So Amazon's a good place to start, or productlaunchformula.com. And I don't know what's there right now when you get there, but if you go there and put your email in, you're going to get a bunch of free stuff that's super cool that'll teach you how to launch.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for being on the program today, and I hope everyone out there was taking notes because there was tons of value in this. If you're catching this at the end, go to the beginning, watch this live stream. Jeff, thanks again for being here, man. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it.